Welcome to the Actionable ESG Talk series, brought to you by AKFI, the Actionable Knowledge Foundational Institute, the world's first non-profit industry association committed to bridging the gap between ESG, sustainability, and digital transformation. Actionable ESG Talk series bring together great minds to discuss the current state and future states of ESG, sustainability, and digital transformation and AI. I'm delighted to be here with our guest, Dr. Mohamed Tash, to talk about sustainability lessons from the oil and gas industries and all his great experience. Just to mention, Dr. Mohamed Tash is a seasoned sustainability professional with over 24 years of experience in enhancing organizational performance in health, safety, quality, environmental, and energy aspects. His passion for driving the transition to a sustainable future is evidenced through his professional roles, active industry engagements, and academic contributions at the university. Again, welcome, Dr. Tash, and very happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Manuel, for having me today, and I'm so delighted to be with you to talk about such important topics. How can we integrate the ESG dimensions into the different aspects of oil and gas companies? Thank you again.
Thank you very much. And as you know, oil and gas, it's at the top of mind when we talk about renewable, when we talk about current energy. Of course, the energy sources are still majorly based on carbohydrates and coal and nuclear to some level. And wanted to open the discussion with what could you share in terms of initiatives by companies like ARAMCO or SABIC, and how they impact the energy management systems. If you have a few minutes, we can talk also about a case study based on one of these or both these companies.
Okay. Thank you, Manuel, for this great start and this significant question. As you know, the oil and gas industry now faces a kind of, let's say, dual challenge. The first dimension about how can the oil and gas companies satisfy or meet the global energy demand, while also drastically improve and reduce the carbon footprint of their operations, specifically the GHG emissions. So several oil and gas companies published a list of commitments about reaching net zero or balancing the amount of greenhouse gas released with the greenhouse gas removed. Also, many of the oil and gas companies now started to focus on improving the operational efficiency, where operational efficiency can be achieved through achieving energy efficiency or reducing the energy demand per unit of product. Also, many of the companies, oil and gas companies, now started to focus on reducing the methane emissions from different operations and reducing the level of routine flaring to level zero or zero routine flaring, and also improving the diversification portfolio of energy mix through integrating the renewable and other unconventional sources like hydrogen into their portfolio, and on the same time improving the practices of circular economy, which depends on closing the gap or closing the loop where there is no wastes are generated and released into the environment. Let's put all these discussions into focus and let's discuss a great company, a big company like Aramco, one of the biggest companies in oil and gas. And let's see how Aramco now deal with this dual challenge. And here Aramco, for example, has released an ambitious targets of reducing the scope 1 and scope 2 emissions from their operations by 2050. And in order to achieve this ambitious goal, Aramco has several strategic pillars. The first pillar of net zero, and by the way, this is not only for Aramco, but for many oil and gas companies, is improving the energy efficiency, or how can companies reduce the energy demand and on the same time improve the production. Okay, or how can companies reduce the carbon intensity, or the amount of energy required to produce 1 unit of their product. So Aramco at first focuses on improving the energy efficiency in the existing operations. Second come the flare and methane management. Aramco improve their operations through improving the what we call LDAR, or leak detection and repair operations, in order to prevent and control all the methane leaks from their operations, and at the same time reduce the amount of flared gases, routine flared gases, to minimal as much as possible. Then comes the major milestone of carbon capture and storage or utilization. As you know, CO2 is one of the main greenhouse gas resulted from different operations. And of course, for oil and gas company, for a significant oil and gas company like Aramco, CO2 is a major component. The strategy here is about converting CO2 into what we can call it a commodity. Okay, how can we capture this CO2 from different operations, whatever pre-combustion or before using the fuel, or post-combustion, by extracting the exhaust from the different streams, and utilize and process this stream in order to extract CO2. After the extraction of CO2, we have two pathways. The first one is to store CO2 in underground reservoirs, okay, to store it permanently in underground reservoirs. The other strategy is to deal with CO2 as a commodity, as we said. How can we convert CO2 into a commodity? By integrating this CO2 into other industries, like the synthesized fuel. Specifically, we combine CO2 with hydrogen, the green hydrogen or blue hydrogen, in order to produce unconventional products. Maybe we can produce methane, for example. Again, we can produce methanol for this from this combination between CO2 and hydrogen. We can produce ammonia. Okay, so this and urea. This carbon capture and storage also is one of the major pillars, and Aramco plans to establish the largest CCU hub in the world, and also at the same time they plan to utilize what we call DAC, or direct air capture. Direct air capture is a new technology that will depend on capturing CO2 from non-point source. It's a unit like the HVAC unit, for example, that will absorb the air and extract the CO2 from this air, and to whatever, to use it or to store it. Also, Aramco plans to expand their renewable emission portfolio by integrating about 12 gigawatt of renewables by 2030. And also they have plans to maximize the natural climate solutions, like expanding the mangrove forests and trees. This is an overview for the actions made by the Aramco. Now, also, if we are going to talk about the companies, not oil and gas companies, we have also petrochemical companies. And here we have an example from SABIC. Also, SABIC is one of the significant petrochemical companies. And also, SABIC released an ambitious roadmap that will depend on integrating several measures in order to reach the climate neutrality by 2050, by reducing scope 1 and scope 2 emissions through also several measures like electrification, replacing the applications powered by fossil fuel to be powered by electricity, and this electricity may come from renewable energy. And also SABIC plans to maximize production several types of hydrogen, like green hydrogen and blue hydrogen. So as we can see, all these initiatives, and by the way, SABIC and Aramco are just examples. We have like Dell, like BP, also published their net zero commits, which depend on similar actions and measures that already taken, like from Aramco and SABIC.
Thank you very much. And there are so many threads I can unpack, but one thing which I heard, one of the things which I heard at the beginning, especially when Tash, you started to talk about Aramco, the effort seems to be balanced also by the economics, right? So it's not only the environmental part, but it's also about profitability, keeping the company profitable with different means. However, some of the reusing of the carbon dioxide, for instance, it's a good example. So they think past the simple capturing and storage, but they think also about how they can reuse it in other products, and the same with SABIC. They think of this is very interesting. Not so much talked about it, because usually they talk about the oil and gas companies. Is more about the pollution, the greenhouse gases, the carbon footprint. You also touch on an important part, which is the emission of methane. It's less discussed, but it's a more active greenhouse gas than carbon, active in the sense that it's more participating in the global warming than CO2 on the same volume. So very interesting points, and really appreciate the case studies you presented. I think we'll come back to some more questions during today's conversation as we go through. But wanted to switch a little bit to greenhouse gases management. I know you have expertise in ISO, and maybe you can give us a little bit more about what's happening with ISO and the importance of standards in greenhouse gases management.
Okay, thank you for this question. And for ISO standards, one of the main challenges that faces many organizations is the lack of standardized framework about how can organizations deal with the greenhouse gas, okay? And how can organizations establish a framework, standardized, scientific, showing what are the steps needed in order to effectively manage greenhouse gas. And here comes the rule of ISO 14064. released by the ISO standard. Actually, I like this standard, and I consider it one of the most practical and advanced ISO standards. This standard, ISO 14064, actually is a part of what we call the 14060 family, which also contains other standards like ISO 14067 related to the carbon footprint of product, or CFP. Now let's focus on the ISO 14064. This standard consists of three parts. The first part is related to the design of GHG inventory, design and reporting on GHG inventory using a standardized framework on the organizational level. This is the first part, to report on GHG on the organizational level. The second part is related to reporting GHG on the project level. It means that if the organization has a specific project or specific GHG project, like improving the energy efficiency, CCUS, expanding renewables, integrated waste management system. So if the company has a specific GHG project, they can use the requirements of ISO 14064 Part 2 to report on this GHG project. So these are the two parts. The third part of the standard is related to validation and the verification of GHG reduction or removal. And here is also a chance to show the difference between the validation and the verification. Validation is a stage that comes at the design phase or the planning phase of the project to validate the assumption about the reduction and the removal of GHG. This is the validation. The verification comes next after the implementation of the GHG reduction or removal actions. Okay, so ISO 14064 with the three subparts shows the organization how can they manage their GHG according to specific criteria, showing the requirements at each stage. Okay, and also this standard follow the cycle of BDCA cycle or plan, do, check, act cycle in order to plan and to implement and to check and to take all the actions needed to reduce the greenhouse gas. So I consider this standard is one of the significant standards that will help a lot of organizations if they want a standardized framework to manage their GHG emissions.
That's very interesting. And to reinforce, you talked about the three major parts: quantification, reporting, and verification. And that makes me think that this is a standard that applies to process development, management, the management of the processes inside the companies to be able to first come up with metrics for quantification, right? And then use the same metrics in reporting and verification. And as the standard gets accepted or implemented across parts of the industries, it offers also an easy way to probably provide auditing and so on, as it requires by some regulatory bodies like the European Union. So
exactly.
So it is the standard, how the standard measures against the AI technologies, because creating large amounts of data, it's an important part of the AI. If you don't have good quality data, you know, AI will not fix that problem.
Yes, actually, the standard has a specific requirement about how do you manage your data quality through establishing a quality management framework that focuses on identifying all the sources of data, and how do you measure your what we call GHG SSR or GHG source, sinks, and reservoir. How do you get the data from the sources? How do you manage the uncertainties related to the data quality and management? And what are the actions the organization would take in order to reduce the uncertainties associated with the data quality and type? All these requirements are mentioned in the standard, and the organization has to show in their report how they deal with all these issues. The standard, by the way, started with a clear set of principles such as relevance, consistency, completeness, and the organization has to show how they apply these principles in their reporting system and in their GHG inventory management system. So the standard shows the organization how to deal with the data, and here's the AI can play a role in helping the organization to improve their data quality and to show where the gap can be between the standard situation and the current one.